So, who's excited? Anyway, we are Dan and Brenda Ryan from San Antonio, Texas, and we're here to talk about mastering your habits. But I want to give just let Brenda give a little introduction, and we'll kind of introduce ourselves a little bit, and then can get into the subject. But Brenda, why don't you go ahead and say hi?
Cool. So you know we're from Texas. We don't do snow, just letting you know. So we're from Texas. We love it down there. Both of us were military brats. That means both of our dads were in the military, so both of us moved all over the world. We ended up meeting in San Antonio. Dan went to the Air Force Academy, and you heard he was a fighter pilot. If you don't know what that is, look it up, and they'll tell you exactly what it is, and he fits the definition to a T. Not anymore, because you've read a lot of books, but yeah, back in the day. Anyway, you have to be tough.
When we started the business, okay, fighter pilots, here's our attitude. Just so you know, I don't want to offend anybody because this is how I came into the business. Number one, fighter pilots are apex predators. So here's the way we think. Number one, we know everything and we're always right. And number two, everybody else is stupid. So if you have better people skills than that, you can build a business.
You're doing awesome.
Because that's the way we started, just to kind of give you a heads up.
Yeah.
Right.
So anyway, he went to the Air Force Academy. I went to a school in Texas, got a master's degree in education. I taught kindergarten, first and second. We were in the Air Force also. We lived 3 years in Holland and 3 years in England. So when we were some of y'all's age in your 20s, we had a blast because we didn't have any kids. We both worked, and we traveled all over Europe, which was awesome. Then we came back to San Antonio, and we had 2 children. And one of them gave us 2 grandchildren. That's the best part about being a parent is when you get to have grandchildren. I'm telling you what. They're 7 and 4, and yeah, it's been a great run. We're having a great time building the business and hanging out with all of you guys. People energize us. So you guys, if you're smiling and happy, we are too.
That's right. So why habits? What do you got to figure out first in a habit? You got to start with the end in mind. Why? See, if you don't have a why, you'll never discipline yourself for a habit. So let me kind of give you an example. When I was at pilot training, I wanted to be a fighter pilot. And to be a fighter pilot, the way the class worked is that you had to be in about the top 2 or 3 people in the class. And I'm competing with a whole bunch of guys from the Air Force Academy and gals from the Air Force Academy. So it's a very competitive environment. So I had to create habits that others weren't willing to. As an entrepreneur, you're going to create habits that others aren't willing to. So what I would do is when my contemporaries were out on Friday night or Saturday and they were playing, I was in what's called a link trainer, creating habit patterns in the airplane. I would go through the checklist so that when I got into the real airplane, it was automatic. It was something I'd already done before. So as we get into the habits, what we want you to do is we want you to understand is we are creating a new comfort zone for you. See, you mentally always want to go to your comfort zone, which usually means being lazy and doing nothing. We want to expand that because now you're walking into the world of entrepreneurship and you have to get out there and do some things to make that happen. So as we go through this with habits and that trainer, why do we have habits? The number one reason we have habits, it improves us. It improves us. To have a daily habit, a daily discipline makes us a better person. Another reason that we have habits is that what it does is it takes the expectation for results. Here's what I mean. If you don't have a habit, do you really have the right to expect the result you're looking for that the habit would give you? So your brain has a disconnect. So it says you're not worthy of getting that result because you haven't done the work or the habit to get it. So what you got to do is you got to create the habit that lines your brain up with getting the result. Does that make sense? So if I want to improve as a people skill, so for instance, when I got started in business, you heard my people skills, right? So my mentor gave me the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. I read the book. I came back the next month, and guess what he did? Read it again. I read it, came back the next month, and he said what? Read it again. See, it was a habit I was forming of reading, but I was changing. He didn't see the change in me, so he said, you got to do more of the habit. The habit gives you the result to have the expectation to work it out. The third reason is habits create stability and confidence. See, a lot of us, when we start our business, we become this emotional roller coaster. We're up one day, down another day. Works today, doesn't work tomorrow. And we're going up and down, and our emotions are all over the place. Anybody experience any ups and downs yet? Right? Anybody experience anything like, oh my gosh, all of a sudden this drama hits your life? What a habit does is it creates stability. And the stability creates confidence. And it allows you to go in there. So as we talk about habits, what I want to do is I'm going to let Brenda kind of start out and talk about what is a habit? How do you get there?
Right. So a habit is a routine or a behavior that is performed regularly, and in many cases, automatically. It's like brushing your teeth, making your bed, if you do that. Eating breakfast, anything that you do without, I'm like, can't remember what I do. Anything that you do all the time automatically. Habits are daily disciplines that determine whether or not you will end up with a positive mental attitude, vibrant health, and freedom, because you need habits in all three of those areas. Successful people have successful habits. If you ask all the leaders on the team, just go up to them and ask them, did you read and listen today? They will say yes. They are very successful, but they are still doing their habits every single day. And creating habits might be difficult. You haven't done this before. You're brand new in business, and you're going to start doing something you've never done before every day. So be easy with yourself. And remember that it's something that you're going to get used to. And what you need to do is have a no exceptions policy. No exceptions policy means every day I'm going to do my business habits, because successful people do their habits. And I'm just going to tell you a short story. When I was in high school, I was a Girl Scout, and I did a lot of backpacking, and I was chosen to go to Wyoming on a backpacking trek for 2 weeks. And I was super excited. I live in Texas. And my dad was like, well, I know you're excited, but we have to work on this. I'm like, work on it? I just have to pack a suitcase and go to Wyoming and take my stuff, my backpack. Oh, no. We have to get hiking boots, and we have to practice in them so you don't get blisters while you're hiking. We have to go make a budget so we can go buy everything. And so my dad made me walk every day in hiking boots in Texas. Sometimes it was 95 degrees. Sometimes he went with me. Sometimes he rode in the car next to me. But every single day, yeah, I thought that was funny. Every single day I had to go out there and practice my habits so that I would have a successful backpacking trip in Wyoming. So
what kind of habits do you need to commit to? The very first habit you need to commit to is a budget. The foundation of financial success is budgeting. Most people come into our business with a messed up budget. Why do you start a business? To make money. Why do you need to start a business? Because you don't have the money, right? So now you're trying to put a business into your life, but yet you go, well, how am I going to go here? How am I going to buy products? How am I going to go to a meeting? How am I going to, how? It's called a budget. Now, what does a budget do? See, a budget is designed so that you get control of your money instead of money and be in control of you. Most people start this business paycheck to paycheck with money controlling them. And you live what's called an if-then world. Meaning, if I can afford it, if, then I'm going to do it. But an entrepreneur says, what do I have to do to be successful? And then makes that decision right. So if you started a business, the right decision is to set up a budget. Now, here's the key. A lot of people will do a budget for 1 month, 2 months, and then guess what? Christmas happened. How many people that got started and actually sat down and did a great budget, maybe December wasn't so good to your budget? Yeah. How about January when you got to make up for those bills? What happened to your budget this month? Right? So what you got to do is you got to be consistent with your budget, and you got to do it month after month after month. And then the last thing is you set priorities in your budget. See, one of the things that new people tend to do is when they get in budget problems, what they do is they turn off their business. But if you turn off your business, how do you create the habits of reading and listening that you need to become an entrepreneur? So instead of just clicking it off, what you do is you call your mentor and say, I need to do another budget. I need help with the budget. and I reset my priorities to budget my business first. Guys, just to let you know, Brenda and I had a period in our business where we were $185,000 in debt through medical bills. We have 2 children with chronic illnesses. But budgeting was a major portion of that, and don't ever stop the habit of budgeting. The second habit we talk about is reading, because reading changes you. So Brenda?
So leaders are readers, and we read to learn, and we also read to learn to change what we need to change about ourselves. When we first got started, I'm always been a big reader, but I needed to change some attitude and some positive mental in my brain. I needed to change some of that. I had some fears. I had some procrastination. I just needed to change those. So I took a bookshelf, and on the very top shelf, I put a lot of the books are on this new launch checklist. I put all the positive mental attitude books on that top shelf, and I gave myself time limits of when I had to have them all completed and moved them to the second shelf. So if that's what you have to do to read, that's what you have to do. When you read, make sure you're either highlighting or underlining things that are the most important, and read one chapter at a time. Underline, highlight, and the next day when you start reading again, go back over what you underlined or highlighted in that previous chapter. Also, for those of you who may have challenges with reading, I was a reading teacher. You can it's okay. It doesn't matter how old you are. You can take your finger and go underneath the sentence, because then you won't go ahead of yourself or you won't see the other words on the page. That's a good way to read. Also, read whenever it's the best time for you to retain what you read. If you fall asleep at night while you're reading, don't do it at night. Do it another time during the day. And also, learn how to enjoy reading. I hear so many people say, "Oh, I don't like to read. I don't like to read." Change the way you talk and say, "You know what? I love to read because I'm going to learn so many things from all these books that I'm going to read."
Cool. And, reading is a mental imprint on your brain. When you read, here's a good question for you. Whose voice do you hear when you read? Yourself. So who does your brain think is a smart person that wrote the stuff in the book? Yourself. So you're speaking to yourself, and you're making yourself smarter and smarter, because that's what you're listening to, and that's who you're hearing. So remember that. That's why you got to have that reading habit every day. How about listening?
Right. So listening is where you take an audio and earbuds or on your phone or whatever you put it on, and you listen for a change in your attitude, for mindset, for education, for how-to, for motivation. That's where the stories come in. Some days, that's all I need is motivation. Some days I need to learn something. So it's whatever you need that day. And also inspiration. So while I'm listening, that's what I say to myself. Listen to Kim and Gary for a professional view. Anthony and Callan for educating us on the how-tos and succeeding on being ourselves. For Brian and Sia for the boldness and the heart, and to Warren and Vanessa for budgeting and building with family. Mike and Dana for their story of always being coachable. And Dennis and Danielle for their fun, witty way of telling us stories of success. Luis and Jackie, they're setting the bar high, and they set the example for leading the way. Tony for overcoming and doing whatever it takes to succeed and always working hard. And to Vinny and Dana for their toughness with love and joy for life. So find times to listen. Those of you who have kids, because I do this with our grandkids, I have to get in this car line that takes 30 minutes to pick them up from school. I read the entire 30 minutes. Don't pull out your phone. Read. And if you have kids and little ones in the back, give them books at the same time. And then you can listen while you're exercising. You can listen while you're cooking, cleaning. You have to stay flexible with your habits, but make sure that you always do them every day.
Yeah, and the next thing is attending everything. So many times we let life get in our way, okay? You know, when I was a fighter pilot, I was flying an airline schedule. I had a schedule. There was no excuse for not being at the brief. In fact, as a fighter pilot, when the door came for brief time, if you weren't there, they shut the door and you lost the flight. In the airlines, I had to show up an hour before the flight took off, and it didn't matter. There was no excuse. So for attending meetings and missing a meeting, one of your GEs, your board plans, there's no real excuse. You can come up with excuses, but the habits say to attend all meetings, and all means all. It's kind of like Brenda said, a no exception clause. And you go, well, but I have this going on. I know. Work around it. See, this business is an and solution-orientated business. A lot of employees come in and say if they can't make all the meeting, they go to none of the meeting. As a solution-orientated guy, I go, well, if you miss the first half, make the second half. You need to be there because that one meeting you miss may be the one that changes your business, changes your life. And the last thing is accountability. You have to have a habit accountability. And the reason you have to have a habit accountability is it keeps you focused. I tell my guys, they go, why do I have to tell you what I read and all that? What are you getting from that? You read all these. I said, yeah, but here's what really happened. At the end of the day, you had to focus on your business, and you had to remember what you read. You had to remember what you listened to. You had to remember what you did. So you stayed focused, and now you're primed for the next day. So it's not just accountability, but the other thing is I'm in tune with you now because of your accountability. I know what you're thinking. I know what you're doing. If I have someone on their first 30 core run and they go 2 or 3 days without accountability, I have like the hair on the back of my head goes up, my antenna goes up, and I'm like, okay, what's going on? What's new in their life? Why aren't they doing this? Right? So you think that maybe your upline's not reading them. We are. I read every accountability I get. And the reason is I want to be in tune with my team and in tune with our new people, so that accountability is so important. The other thing is it makes you think. So it makes you actually think about what's important. And accountability habits are compounding. Just like you read the book, The Compound Effect, habits are compounding, and that's how change really starts to occur, okay? How do you form a habit? How do you form a habit? Habits are formed by creating priorities. So go ahead, Brenda.
A priority is something that is regarded as more important than any other thing. When we say, I don't have time, what we are really saying is, it's not my priority. We have to have the ability to know which things in our lives are the most important to us and make sure we have time for them. If we don't, we will spend our lives doing what is urgent rather than what is important. And I will tell you, Dan and I are in the middle place in our family where we still have older parents and we have kids and grandkids, and the phone will ring. This has happened to you guys in here, and it's an emergency. We grab 4 things before we leave the house: an excess, a perfect water, a book, and our earbuds. Because if you're going to spend 6 hours in an emergency room, you can listen, you can read, and you have to have something to drink. That's good, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah. So when you're setting that and making a priority, right, you need to have a time budget. So as you get started in business and you're starting to stick something into your life that's a new priority, a lot of times, a lot of you have never time budgeted. And I believe in the beginning, a time budget is almost as important as your financial budget. And in the time budget, I'm not going to go into the details of it, but you basically set your priorities, and now you can find out where can you do your habits? Where do you do the things we have to do? How do you fit in your 30-day core run? How do you fit in the accountability? Where do you put it? Because everybody starts this business with less time than they think it takes to build the business. But let me describe something to you. When we started our business, I was an airline pilot, so I was gone 3 to 4 days every week. Brenda was a single mom, and we had 2 children with chronic illnesses. Our son is a type 1 diabetic, and our daughter has juvenile arthritis. 3 times a week, Brenda had to take our daughter to physical therapy while I was gone as a single mom. We had to handle a type 1 diabetic. Now, does that sound a little overwhelming as far as getting your habits in and doing all the stuff you're supposed to do? So therefore, what Brenda did is she set us family on a time budget. Everybody knew what was going on, and we set a time budget. The first time you do this, don't try to do it alone. Get with your upline and sit down, because you are putting something totally new into your life, and you may never have time budgeted before. You may have lived a life that just, let's get it done as it gets done. You know, anybody just kind of go, well, I got to do this, and I got to do this, and I got to do this, and I got to do this, but you don't really have any order to do it. It's just, and then you're always like behind, right? It feels like kind of like your budget, paycheck to paycheck. You're always one step behind. Well, that's because you haven't ever thought about a time budget and set true priorities. And how do you set a priority? What you want. If you want to succeed in the business, you got to set that priority.
Cool. So what I had to do to fit in habits were, well, the first thing is, at first I thought I was too busy to do habits. But then Dan was doing them every day, and he was changing, and I thought, well, I don't want to get too far behind him. I mean, I want to be with him. I want to be growing at the same time he's growing, so I better do habits. So I had to figure it out. So I made a family calendar with 4 different colors of marker, and everything was on that calendar, and we kept a pretty strict schedule, and our kids did habits also at the same time. When he was at home from an airline trip, from 1 to 2 in the afternoon during the summer, we had FOB, feet on bed. When our son was 12 and 13, I still made him put his feet on the bed and read a book. At the same time, we were all reading. The telephone rang, we didn't answer it. The doorbell rang, we didn't answer it. We made sure that we got all our habits done every single day. And I stay as organized as I can. I'm a pretty organized person, but you can learn how to be organized. Just ask for help in that.
And building habits is based on triggers, okay? So when I was flying airplanes, we had a thing called boldface. So when emergency actions happened, like an engine fire or a hydraulic failure, something that was big, we had responses that we had to answer to. They were called boldface. So I had to know my response, right? I had to know that I had to have a trigger. So the easiest way to form a new habit is to replace an old habit with a new habit. So if you're used to watching TV, get rid of the remote and put a book there. That's the new trigger. Reward yourself for completing the habit before. And Brenda, how do you really get a habit started in this business?
Everybody should have this with them all the time.
Yep.
In your bag, in your car, if you need to do it in the bathroom, whatever you need to do, you need to know this book. Or if your upline calls you or you're having a meeting, make sure you have this. But in here has all the audios to listen to. It has all the books to read. It shows you how to do a 30-day core run, a 90-day core run. Everything is in this book.
And what's the biggest thing about a 30-day core run? You're establishing a new habit pattern. You're creating a new comfort zone. Do I expect perfection in your first 30-day core run? No. You may have to do a second 30-day core run or a third 30-day core run. It's about creating a habit that is there with you for a lifetime. Brendan and I do a constant 90-day core run. It's a constant thing we do every day because we've created a habit. And what's that habit given us as we finish up? It's given us the life we have now. And it all started with basic habits.
This is a copyrighted program of The Collective, powered by Markham Man Productions, affiliated with Markham.